Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Oscar. Good to have you guys today. We will be talking about the story out of Thomas Merton's interpretation of the Chuang Tzu, Confucius and the Madman, pages 58 and 59. You can probably just fast forward to the last 10 minutes and see what we really figure this thing is talking about, because it takes us the whole time normally just to hear through our conversation what's really being said. It's funny. That's how it works, though. We don't prepare, so we're just wanting to hear what it's saying to us in this moment. As far as a resource for you, I want to mention the private Facebook group that we have by the same name. It's called the Tao of Our Understanding, with the same logo as the podcast. It's a private group. Only the people within the group can see who you are. No one outside of the group. There we can communicate during the week. If there's any questions about the podcast that we want to discuss, we can talk about them. We can post any related content that we have. We also post most of the time the video of the podcast, and I usually leave that unedited, so it's probably 10, 15 minutes longer than the actual podcast itself, because we shorten it down for time. So if you want to be as if you're there, you're welcome to enjoy that. Within the Facebook group, we also post the link there too. Of course, if you're not privy to Facebook and you would like to get the link, all you have to do is email me at info@buddyc.org and I'll be happy to send it to you. Okay, let's get on with our story, Confucius and the Madman. I told the guys I'd give them a break today and I would read. So I'm going to read through the whole thing, then we'll come back and start at the beginning. Confucius and the Madman. When Confucius was visiting the state of Chu, along came Kai Yu, the madman of Chu. So he's a madman. And he sang outside the master's door, "O Phoenix, Phoenix, where's your virtue gone? It cannot reach the future or bring the past again. When the world makes sense, the wise have work to do. They can only hide when the world's askew. Today, if you can stay alive, lucky are you, try to survive. Joy is feather light, but who can carry it? Sorrow falls like a landslide, but who can parry it? Never teach virtue more. You walk in danger, beware, even ferns can cut your feet. When I walk crazy, I walk right, but am I man to imitate? The tree on the mountain height is its own enemy. The grease that feeds the light devours itself. The cinnamon tree's edible, so it is cut down. The lacquer tree is profitable, they maim it. Every man knows how useful it is to be useful. No one seems to know how useful it is to be useless. Okay, we'll start from the beginning. So this is a madman that we're talking about. He is a madman. Confucius was visiting where this madman was. So this is Confucius telling the story, I believe. And the madman sang this song outside the master's door. So the madman sought out the master, not the master sought out the madman. So Confucius didn't seek out the madman sought him out. And so he starts repeating this, sang a song for Confucius. Phoenix, Phoenix, where's your virtue gone? What did Phoenix mean? I know it's a bird, but it had special meaning in there culture, doesn't it? Good luck, harmony. So that's what Phoenix means. So where's your good luck gone? Where's your fortune gone? It cannot reach the future or bring the past again. So being the Phoenix would be high in the air. It can't reach, and it can't reach the past or the future. Doesn't talk about it reaching the present, though, just the past and the future. Okay. When the world makes sense, the master has work to do. They can only hide when the world is askew. In other words, I think when the world makes sense, we can see what our next right action is. When the world doesn't make sense, like the Phoenix being high, we can't see what's next. Okay. Today, if you can stay alive, lucky are you. Back to the Phoenix, lucky are you. Try to survive. Okay. If y'all see anything else in this, please let me know. That seems pretty. I'm not seeing much more there at the moment. Oscar.
Uh, I think it's interesting to realize that all of the Chuang Tzu, Confucius is not the most popular guy. He is really the opposite of Lao Tzu. And a virtue has something to do with this. So Confucius is a man of rituals, of virtue, actually from the outside to the inside. So he's more working, okay, you need to do this and this, and then you become a wise man if you work hard enough in the future. And the wise man here, or the madman, or the fool, who's the madman is the fool and the wise man all in one, I think, is saying you can only do it now. You can only do it here and now. That's where you live, and that's where you can be wise. Today, if you can stay alive, lucky are you. So that's all that's all. That's his own. That's the only thing he's concerned about, staying alive. And so he's really in the present moment. So it's a kind of, I sense a kind of rebellion against virtue as means to become spiritual or wise or knowledgeable. I think the Lao Tzu is the other way around. So it works from the inside to the outside. If you are from the inside, in the inside, you are okay and wise and at peace and in the present moment, then the virtue will automatically come from you also. So there won't be, yeah. If you are peaceful inside, you're not going to make war, right? You're not going to fight, and you're not going to be selfish. And so I sense a kind of clash between Taoism and Confucianism. I'm not correct with that word. Thanks.
Thank you, Oscar. Yeah. Thanks for bringing us a little clarity there. I was at a loss. Thank you. And next, he starts going more of that inward description, doesn't he? Joy is feather light, but who can carry it? Sorrow falls like a landslide, but who can parry it? Parry would be ward off. So who could drop sorrow, even though it's so heavy? Who can let it go, but who can carry joy that's so light? Never teach virtue more. You walk in danger, beware, beware. Even ferns can cut your feet, which we know that ferns are soft. When I walk crazy, I walk right. But am I a man to imitate? How do you walk in danger if you teach virtue more?
You can become a preacher, man. So you have to practice what you preach, right? If you don't practice what you preach, you are hollow.
Yeah.
I'm hearing faith in here.
Okay.
And surrender.
I masked my fears with alcohol and with success and failure, with work, with all these things. When I started shining the light of the virtue of the program in my life, I could no longer escape from those things. So, in that regard, the program became dangerous to me. I had to do some very difficult work that I did not have to do before. I was listening to Jim B's story. He's in the fourth edition of the big book, The Vicious Cycle is his story. He's one of the beginning people in AA. And his story, he talks about three of the stories in the original book, they committed suicide. They died by suicide. Three of the stories in the first edition of the big book. We don't know how many of these others. What I'm saying is, when we start shining the light of the truth in our lives, uh, there's very difficult work, and sometimes we decide not to. Sometimes we don't pursue that work, and it kills us. Sometimes it kills us with alcohol or drugs or whatever our vice is that we were there for, or by our own hand. Granted, that happens otherwise too, but what I'm saying is that may be part of what this teaching virtue is dangerous. Maybe.
Yeah, when you take away that vice that you've been using to medicate, it gets real quick.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And sprinkle in some realization that Brian's the problem.
Yes. That's a good thing that we find out we're the problem. That's not to beat us up.
Yeah.
That's to show us there's a way out.
Yeah.
Because if you're my problem, I can't surrender you, but I have the possibility of surrendering me.
That's it.
The second step doesn't say that we would be restored, that we could be restored.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Okay, now we've got some single line examples of usefulness versus uselessness. Brian?
I was going to say those words before that is we came to believe, and that speaks to faith.
Yes.
We at least believe that there is some hope.
I'll just read the second step.
Yeah.
To believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Could. Yeah. The tree on the mountain height is its own enemy. Oscar?
Yeah, about second step. We had such a wonderful meeting yesterday about second step. And everybody, there were so many people coming in a different way to a higher power and came to believe in so many different ways. Some with big struggles and some very smooth. And for me, it was really when I realized what the step was saying, we came to believe that a power greater than itself could restore us to sanity. When I realized, wow, suppose that it would be true. And this was the entrance for me. Suppose it's true what it says here. Suppose I made a mistake all my life by thinking a higher power is something outside of me, which has not so much to do with me. That's how I saw it. I never had a version of God or something, but I never realized it's something within me which can work through me. And when I realized, oh my, that could be a possibility. It could be true what it's saying. And for me, that was enough to go to the next step. And I really heard a lot of people yesterday who just needed a small change of mind. Not so much, it's not such a huge difference. But then there comes a kind of belief, a belief in, okay, might be true. And then when you continue to doing the steps and the process starts to work, then you realize, oh my, it is true. And then the belief where I started starts becoming trust by doing the steps. So it starts with me, it started with belief, and then it became trust by doing the rest of the steps. Thanks.
Thank you, Oscar. That's the great thing about the program. People get hung up on a lot of times on God as if you're told that you must believe something. It's actually quite the opposite. You never hear, or very rarely, never hear, do you have a meeting where the subject is what your belief in what is greater is. We found that when you have that as a meeting topic, it just becomes a measuring contest. That's your God. Well, let me tell you about my God, blah, 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 blah. And the meeting just goes downhill. You're told that you have to surrender, basically, is what it is, but you're not told what you surrender to. I found that my surrender had nothing to do with a change in what beliefs I had. I thought I had to change my beliefs, but I did not. I just had to change my approach to what is by surrender rather than thinking I'm infused with more strength. Because if I feel I'm being helped, as in gave more strength, then that's not surrender. And I know that's splitting hairs for some folks, but that's how I had to approach it, because me thinking God was helping me with something or some way I was being helped almost killed me. Because finally, when I gave up and quit trying, that's when I realized that my strength was in weakness, not in more strength. And that strength came about with stopping the excessive effort to change me, but to see how I could help someone else. That's how it happened for me. The tree on the mountain height is its own enemy. I'll just read all of these and then we'll come back. The grease that feeds the light devours itself. The cinnamon tree's edible, so it's cut down. The lacquer tree's profitable, so they maim it. Every man knows how useful it is to be useful. So is it a good thing to be the tree on the top of the mountain? Is it a good thing to be the grease that the light uses? Or the cinnamon tree? Or the lacquer tree? Is it good to be useful? Basically, I think it's the question. I have more of a challenge of maintaining spiritual fitness. Let me say it that way. When things are going good rather than when things are bad. Because if I'm having difficult circumstances in life, I seem to double down on my spirituality. I seem to do some self-seeking. But I have a tendency when things are good to do the opposite. I mean, if things are good, not being as inward inquisitive as I would be when I'm struggling in some way. So I could see how usefulness could be a disadvantage, really, at times. And it depends on, too, what that means. You know, the tree at the height, is it proud because it's the tree? Is this talking about usefulness from a small self, pride, ego, excessive effort, self, which I think is where that's coming from, rather than being used in our everyday life like we're wanting to be used. But even with that, there's times I can add that pride and ego to it, because I have to watch myself. If somebody points me out as doing something that's useful, I'll be honest with you, the time that my ego's challenged the most is when I get those emails that say I saved someone's life. And I get those occasionally. And I'm like, man, it's a two-edged sword. I'm like, I'm grateful. I flip that to gratitude when that happens, because I know it's not me that wrote this book that does the pod, all of that. I know that. But still, I have to be cautious because there's a portion of that's the tree on the mountaintop. I do being complimented. I would be lying if I said no. I do. I do try to keep that right sized. I have to be cautious of that. Oscar?
Yeah, I have the same thing. I never got an email that I saved someone's life, but I get some gratitude once in a while for sponsoring people, for instance, and they stay clean. And I feel this sense of pride, and it really annoys me that I feel this because the same coin is the other side. If I take credit for this one, I also need to take credit for the ones that fail. So I try to give it away as much as I can. The feeling that I have something to do with it. I do what I can in the moment. I do what I can, and I ask for power by a higher power, and I do the thing my sponsor did with me as good as I can. But I can't be held responsible uh, for the results. So it's not my. I don't. Yeah, that's was my thought by what you
I
said.
I have to shine light on that too and not keep it a secret. I have to say something about it when that's happening for me. That's why I even mentioned that was not bragging, is because if I don't get that out, then it just grows and grows. With sponsees too, Oscar, I remember when I first started sponsoring, I had more local guys I sponsored rather than online. There was several would come to the our Sunday morning meeting, which was the meeting that I back home that I attended. That was my home group, and they always wanted the first year chip. They asked me to give them the chip, and they always talked about how I saved their life. That was just part of that. That's just how it was. That's for most people how they think of their sponsor in their first year. So I learned to accept that and just say thank you and look at it from a place of gratitude and know it's not me doing that. Second year comes up. Most of the time, they want me to give them their chip again. I said, no, pick someone else that's helped you in your sobriety. I don't need to give you your chip the second year. There's other people that have helped you. Let one of them. And so they do, but I would really like for them to still talk about how I saved their life. I like hearing that. That's just, I have to stay right sized with it. So when they get done, I remember one, I said, man, I wanted you to tell someone else. I want someone else to give you your chip, but you could still talk about how great I am and just laugh it off because I have to, in some way, shine light on that. If not, that will grow and grow in my life. I have to be transparent in some way. I know I've told before I had a sponsee for a long time that had a podcast. He still has a podcast, and we would meet on Thursday morning. He would record the podcast later that day, so he almost always talked about me in the podcast because we just met. Something that we had talked about. I found myself listening to the podcast to see if he talked about me or not. He's got a very popular podcast. And so I was like, and I found myself doing this. Just, wait a minute, I'm listening so I can, and once he talks about me, I'd cut it off. All right. So he had me on the podcast regularly. So the next time he had me on the podcast, I said, I told the story. I said, I won't have to listen to the podcast today to see if you talk about me. I said it on the podcast, right? Because I just had to get that out. And I could think of no other way to get it out on the venue that I was wanting to be mentioned. So I thought that's the best way to. After I did that the first time, I never had to do it again. I never found myself listening to the podcast again to see if he talked about me. that transparency works.
When we don't get it out, we make it real, I'm afraid.
Yes.
When it becomes real, we are in danger. And the way you talk about it sounds like you make it unreal with the gesture, with the
I do.
opening up.
Yeah.
And it is real, of course, but it's not so important and not really real. But
Yeah.
when we keep it inside, we create a monster, which is pride. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful story. Thanks for that.
And I still have to do that. I'm telling you, I have to stay on top of that. I can't let those little secrets stay there. We're sick as our secrets.
Yeah. Buddy, do you check and see if there's a spike in downloads on
I
that?
don't see the downloads because he I could ask him though, but I said, I've got to shine some light on that. I can't let that stay. All right. So he's making the distinction between being useful and useless. I think it may be some of the way he's being useful too. And then he closes with the phrase, no one seems to know how useful it is to be useless. Oscar?
Sometimes in his meetings, we have the old timer who comes and they don't talk a lot. They don't do service and they don't talk a lot and they are just there. And they are, yeah, what's the use of it? We can't really explain it, but I always really like to sit close to him because it was so quiet there. It was calm there. So he had a calmness with him, which I really appreciated. I sat as close to as possible. But it seems like the one sentence says, every man knows how useful it is to be useful. So if every man knows it, it's something of the world, right? So everyone knows, okay, if you're useful, you're useful. And if you're not useful, you're not useful. And that there is this, yeah, you can gain something with it probably, and you can, or learn something, or it's all useful. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows how it works. But no one seems to know, and no one is quite extreme. No one seems to know how useful it is to be useless. That's really wonderful because we don't know. We don't know if I'm useless and I do my things, whatever it is, and it's completely useless. Nobody can know how useful it will be for a future, in a future time, because I'm just, yeah, we don't know what comes after that and after that as a result of what I did, which seemed to be useless. So the useful, when I see, this is useful, this is good to do, it's useful, it's always very short term. And useful on the long term, we can't see. Nobody knows what is useful on the long term. It's like the farmer and the horses, right? It's the same thing. We don't know what is useful in the future. So we don't know how useful the useless is. Is it making sense?
Yes, and I'd missed that. Thank you. Because the difference is every man knows, and then no one seems to know. That points us to where the Tao is. You're right. Thank you, Oscar. I missed that. So, from what you're saying, usefulness is used up, but uselessness is not. You can continue to be useless. You can't continue to be useful in this story because if you're the tree on the mountain, you're going to get cut down. You have enemies. The grease that feeds the light is going to run out. The cinnamon tree, it's going to get cut down. The lacquer tree is going to continue to be maimed. So things that are useful are used up. So I think this is talking about a different kind of usefulness and a different kind of uselessness, not in the sense that every man knows. Because you're right, if every man knows, that's not what we're looking for. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Same kind of deal, I think. That's why you can carry joy. That's why you can lay aside sorrow. You can only do that if you're useless. Here's a quote from the Wenza. This is chapter 107. Sages always work on the formless outside and do not keep their minds on the formed inside. In this way, calamity and trouble have no way to get to them, and neither repudiation nor acclaim can stain them. So they change the formed inside with the formless outside, acting their way into right thinking. Seems totally useless, doesn't it? Why does it help me when I help someone else? Absolutely useless. Looks like I'd help me first. Isn't that how it works? I put on my mask first, then I can help someone else. I think spiritually it's the opposite. My mask goes on by me helping someone else. I'll fumble mine around, but if I start focusing on the other person, I don't mean physically, as a spiritual principle.
Buddy, when you're helping someone else from a useless perspective, that could mean just listening.
Sure. Exactly.
What I call loaning someone an ear.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell a lot of people. I'm like, and I've even told my sponsor that. He would share he's got some stuff going on, it's a little stressful, and I'm like, told him, I said, hey, if you need an ear, call me. And all I'm doing is listening and keeping my mouth shut, which is a miracle in itself. But miracles do happen. Just being there, being present.
Thank you, Brian. This is the 41st verse of the Tao Te Ching. This is Stephen Mitchell, the first stanza. When a superior man hears of the Tao, he immediately begins to embody it. When an average man hears the Tao, he half believes it, half doubts it. When a foolish man hears of the Tao, he laughs out loud. If he didn't laugh, it wouldn't be the Tao. What every man knows usually gets laughed at. He's laughing at what is real. What we're talking about is what is that part that seems useless, that in fact is the most useful. This is verse 11 in my interpretation. Emptiness. It is the emptiness of the hub that makes the wheel useful. It is the empty space within the cup that gives it purpose. It is the space within the house that makes the house livable. The emptiness we allow is our true value. We could say the uselessness we allow. We could substitute uselessness for that. Let's read it that way. The uselessness of the hub. What can you use the hub for unless you put it on an axle? It can't roll itself. And if you didn't have the emptiness, the openness of the hub, you couldn't attach it. If it was solid, you couldn't use it. The empty space. How is the empty space useful? You would seem empty space would be useless, but it's that emptiness, that uselessness of the cup within the cup that gives it purpose. Space in the house, the same way. The uselessness we allow is our true value. What seems to be useless, the empty space, is what's most useful. That's the usefulness of uselessness.
Willingness.
I think that's the title. Usefulness of uselessness.
The empty space in a cup is the same space as the empty space outside of the cup.
Yes.
So it's everything. So the emptiness is everything.
That's good. I had no idea we were going there. See, go to the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. I had no idea that's where we were heading.
You can make TikTok videos out of it.
If we only made videos, Oscar, we maintain our anonymity. So,
Yeah.
True.
But we do post the podcast on YouTube. We just do it with the logo. And we have people who listen every week. We have a lot of subscribers. I think 100 plus the subscribers to YouTube, which amazes me. I wouldn't sit there and watch a blank logo. I just put it on just as one of the ways to distribute, not thinking it would get any views at all. It's amazing. I had no idea. I don't know what's useful, do I?
That uselessness can be opening our ears.
Yes.
One thing I was thinking about was the tree on the mountain height. I was reflecting on how I go to a meeting and there's myself, I can want to say something really spiritual or really witty. But then there's always that person that comes out with something that you're not expecting. They may not say much, but they're being vulnerable and they're just in this place that they say something that just hits you right between the eyes that you weren't expecting. And that wasn't their intent.
So, did Confucius think the madman was useful?
No, he's useless.
He's useless, right?
Yeah, the madman is useless.
Yeah. We know different.
Thank God.
For real. Do we need to sit with this a while longer, or are y'all good? People listening don't know. We take the pauses out. Sometimes we sit for a while in between comments just to sit with this as we talk about it. We're listening more than we're speaking, I think. That's where I try to be. Okay, guys, if there's nothing else, thanks for a good meeting. Hopefully we'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.